Again, we're the Awesome Fund. We're a $5 million fund investing in pre-seed and seed stage deals in and around or near Kentucky, and we'd love to hear from you.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Awesome Inc.'s podcast, where we highlight people pursuing their definition of, you guessed it, awesome. So buckle up and get ready for some more success story adventures and failures from Kentucky's tech and entrepreneur community.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Awesome Inc. podcast. This is not Garrett Farbach. This is Keith McMunn, joined by Ben Strevey. Say hi, Ben.
Hello.
And we've got a little bit of a different episode for you today. This one is revolving around the newly launched Awesome Fund, a result of helping build the entrepreneur ecosystem around Kentucky with Awesome Inc. since 2009. And frankly, it's a realized dream, and we're excited about it because it means that we are deploying capital, which is sorely needed in our state and much appreciated by founders around the state. And it's a dream fulfilled or fulfilling for us. Some of what we'll talk about on this episode is some of what we've learned in the early months of this fund. Our eyes have been opened in some surprising ways, but other ways, maybe not so much. But we'll discuss how or why sometimes good or great companies don't necessarily make great venture investments. We'll talk about the value of starting relationships, especially with investors early. And we'll sign off with how to reach out to us and get involved. So let's kick it off.
So Keith, do you want to talk about how the Awesome Fund came to be and little details about it?
Yeah. The start of the fund, you can't really mention the start of the fund without first acknowledging the strong foundation built over the last decade and a half out of Awesome Inc. Awesome Inc., as all of our listeners are probably well aware of at this point, has existed since 2009 and is a combination of multiple entities under a hood, including a software company, a coding school, a co-working space, and multiple programs to nurture startup companies. But not until about 2 years ago, in the year 2021, that we really found it the ripe opportunity to start investing in the companies through a fund. So the network built over the last decade and a half made raising $5 million for this fund an endeavor worth going for. And it was so fundraising was a journey. But so it's a $5 million fund. And our goal is to invest in pre-seed and seed stage companies in and around and near Kentucky, but not limited to Kentucky. They'll all be technology-focused startups just because it's most of what we see and work with. They'll majority be software plays. What we look for out of this fund, what we know is that we want to see traction, nothing new here. But we've talked with other investors and we look, especially we get enticed by opportunities that kind of already have that 5K to 50K, 5K of MRR or maybe about 50K ARR. So those are good benchmarks that get us excited. So that's a little bit about our fund. And we use, especially like 5 Across in the fellowship program as pipeline fillers for our fund, but we accept applications on a website. And again, we'll take applications from especially in-state of Kentucky, but outside as well. So I've mentioned before, or a little bit earlier on the podcast, that we've already made a few investments. Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about those investments and what you liked, or even if you didn't like something about them, you want to share a little bit about them?
Well, we obviously liked them. We made investments into them, but no company, no startup is perfect, and we acknowledge that. We recognize that. We're cognizant of that. From our own experience, then our experience of the fellowship and 5 Across and working with startups, recognizing that there are areas every company can grow, and if we can help them grow in those areas, then we can really provide some value beyond just capital, beyond just investment. So the first 2 companies that we invested in, we sort of did them jointly at the same time, no relation to the companies particularly, but both start with T, which is interesting. TitleWise and Think Health. And they're very different in stage levels. Think Health is much later stage than TitleWise is. So they're at the sort of top end of seed, whereas TitleWise is at the early stage of pre-seed. But they both have some similar aspects to them. TitleWise is a title research platform with standardized reports, chain of title tracking, and then smart lookup for documents within the title industry. And its founder, Jennifer, who I believe was on the podcast previously, she was in the space for a number of years and wasn't satisfied with existing solutions that she was having to work with. And there was a lot of manual work. And so she decided, hey, I want to build something. I want to build software that can make my job easier. And let's see if other people are interested in this, and started selling that competitors of the business she was currently in, which I think speaks highly of her plan to disrupt her existing comfortable business life with a startup to say, hey, I think this has greater opportunity for me. So it's okay if I sort of sell to my customers to help them do better at their job, because I think this platform, this play will be more successful for me in the long run. So we really liked that. She built the platform and started selling it before she'd even talked to us, which I think says a lot. And I think a lot of founders get to the point of that chicken and egg problem, which I recognize it's really hard to be in, of I can't build because I don't have money, so I need money. And investors are asking, hey, well, what have you built? But more importantly than built is what have you sold? What revenue do you have? And she had revenue from paying customers. She convinced one of the larger competitors to use that software, and then also her existing business to use that and pay for that instead of just using it for free. And so I think those two things, along with the space, as I was looking into it, she has dreams of significantly larger market than just the title software. She wants to use that for the insurance industry as well, and that's a significantly larger market. And I think that is what drew us to her, and the valuation was pretty fair. The investment wasn't too much for us, and it was a great, solid, early stage investment for us. The second one, ThinkHealth, is a platform for using natural language processing to analyze radiology reports and doctor's notes to identify lung cancer. They've started moving outside of lung cancer into other organs of the body. And this is all from incidental findings. So these are reports that exist regardless of their platform, but now they're using these reports to find higher rates of cancer. This is a significantly later stage company. They had 20-ish employees at the time. Their founders were radiology doctors, and they basically saw all these incidental findings come in, but the focus was on, hey, this person broke their leg, let's focus on the leg. But we had the scan with a nodule that we identified, and they should really get that checked out. But there's not really a system in place to have that go through the hospital and make sure that those people are told, you have a nodule, you should come back in and get checked out for that nodule. So they built this whole platform for that, used natural language processing to analyze doctor's notes that maybe have that written, and they implemented that platform in a variety of hospitals. They're in 25 different hospital systems now. And I think the slide that sold me of, hey, this is a fantastic opportunity, is they implemented a system. The year before they implemented it, that hospital had around 100 nodules found that year, and 25 of which were cancerous. They implemented it a year later. There was over 500 nodules that they had found, and 125 being cancerous. So the exact same ratio of cancer, but just significantly more, 5 times more cases of cancer on the same patient population over the same time period or length of time. And I think that showed really how important innovation in startups and how that can really positively impact and change the world for better. And not just because, hey, now we have a better CRM, or now we're able to do title searches better. I mean, that's great. That's a great investment, but this is actually impacting people's daily lives for the better to help them live longer because they're identifying cancer sooner and more of it. So those are the two investments. And the takeaways from both of those for me is they are founders from the space. They are experts in the space, and they found a problem that they were encountering themselves and said, there's a better way to do this and I can do it. And then have gone on and done that. They executed. And I think that execution is important.
You see that with the TitleWise deal too. I mean, one of the things that really gets us excited is the ability to sell even what's not beautiful yet. We love to see that, and I think you get a sense of that too with ThinkHealth. Although they're a little bit further along, so I'm not going to call what they have not beautiful. It is beautiful, but the execution is there and important, and that's what kind of links both of those investments. So Ben, over the course of our fund so far, it hasn't been long, but we've run into a few cases where we acknowledge that a company is really good or even great, but doesn't necessarily make a great venture investment for us. How can you make a little sense of that?
What people I don't think realize necessarily, at least a lot of startup founders don't realize, is that a venture fund, is very similar to a startup in that we have investors and we have to do good by our investors. And our goal for them is to give them a return on their investment. What that dictates is certain mathematical principles, effectively, that we're trying to give them a better return, even though that there's a high risk. So that's why we have to give them a better return to offset that risk. And that necessitates giving a certain amount of return over the time period of the fund. And so most funds are around 10 years. And so we need to give a 10x return over that 7 to 10 years in order to make them a good return in that ideally 25% plus annualized return. When we invest into a company, we anticipate that by the time that company exits, whether it's through an acquisition, whether it's an IPO, that will be diluted by at least 50% of our investment. And as a result, that company needs to actually grow 20x from where we invest at the bare minimum. And so we need to find companies that can do that. And when we're looking at a company, the big thing we're looking at is how big is the market? And the reason we're looking at that is that if a company has to go from, say, we invest at a $10 million valuation and it has to get to now $200 million in valuation, and it's only $1 billion industry, that's 1/5 of the industry that one company has to own. And that's just a real risk to say, of all the companies in the space, of hundreds or thousands of them in the space, we have to pick one of the 5 that will be here at the end. And that is just difficult. I don't think it's realistic. As opposed to, say, we're looking at a $10 billion market or a $20 billion market, then the number of companies that can be $200 million companies are substantially 10x or 20x the time. So instead of one of 5, we're one of 50 or one of 100. And so that's why we like to find companies that are in a market that is large enough, even if they don't become the next $1 billion unicorn, even at a $200 million exit, because they get acquired by that $1 billion unicorn, they still make us money in the same amount that we need to return to our investors for a good return. There are a lot of companies that we've talked to with products that I personally really enjoy and say, hey, this is a great product. This is a great company. We like the founders, but your market is way too small. And it's a $1 billion market. And that sounds really awesome, but there's 30, 50, 200 companies in this space, and they all want to be the big fish in the pond. Yeah, if you get to $3 million in revenue or $5 million in revenue, that's an awesome business. And you should be really proud of that. And you are an entrepreneur, you are a founder, and that's successful for you. But purely based on the mathematical aspect of how a venture fund works, that isn't successful for us. And so we can't invest in those companies as much as we would like to help and support those founders. And so at Awesome Inc., what we can do is help you by getting you into the fellowship, or help you by getting into Five Across, or putting you in connection with people through our network. But from a fund perspective, it might not just make sense, not because we don't like you, not because we don't believe in you, not because we don't think the company is good, but just because the finances just don't work out in our favor.
We're also really seeing from a new angle the importance of building relationships from a fundraising perspective with startup founders. And what's really powerful about the Awesome Inc. model is that if you're a company that gets accepted into programs of Awesome Inc., that it really helps build the relationship between the founding team, and now our fund. So relationship building is just crucial. And like Ben hinted earlier, is that we are entering into it by investing in a company. We're entering into a partnership that is in some regards like a marriage. It's a contractual agreement to be in relationship. And in order to feel comfortable getting married or entering into some sort of formalized partnership, you obviously want to be able to do that with someone that you have come to know and trust, and at minimum, be able to feel rhythms within, or see a history, a little bit of how you can tell what someone might be like in the future is a smidge, at least from what you've seen, what they've done from their past. And so we definitely want to speak to the value of building a relationship. Of course, this is probably not much new to many of the founders that are listening to us, but I mean, it's never, in our opinion, it's never too early to get in touch with us to build a relationship. And my gosh, I would just be so impressed by a founder that even emailed us their deck, some highlights, and said, I'm actually not ready to raise yet, but I wanted to give you an initial benchmark because if we're, there's a chance that we might enter into some sort of a relationship here in the coming months or years. But here's kind of an initial benchmark. And I guess I kind of already gave away what is especially valuable about starting that relationship early is the benchmark. We want to be able to see what you're able to do over a time period. It's one thing for you to get in touch and tell us what you've done. And, you know, like at some point, like we've got to assess whether or not we can trust the details of that story and the way that you tell it. But if you give us benchmarks or checkpoints along the way over a relationship that involves more time, then we'll kind of get to witness it with our own eyes, and it becomes even easier to make that bet or to make that investment based on the data points that we get to see. It also helps us to know where we can make recommendations. If we need to help you with your hiring or with marketing, sales, product development, it's good for us to know, especially with the Awesome Inc. kind of foundation, what those maybe pain points are so that we can help alleviate or solve those even before any type of a formal agreement or investment occurs. So don't hear us say that like we expect companies to be perfect, that you have to put your best foot forward constantly. Obviously you want to do that, and that's the temptation. But the genuine relationship is probably what's most valuable here. Ben, anything you want to add to that?
A great example, I was talking to a company today and was asking about conversion rates from demos to sales. And he's like, honestly, it's not great right now. It's something we have to improve upon. And these are the things we're going to start trying to do to improve upon that. But being able to talk with a founder that openly and see, all right, there is room for improvement beyond just, do you have product market fit, beyond just, is the market big enough, but organizational changes of, hey, this isn't where we want it to be, but we know we can get it to a different point. We just have to keep working at it and figuring out what that solution is. I think in my mind, I think highly of a founder that's able to do that, of recognizing their weaknesses and saying, that's okay, but we're still going to fix those weaknesses in time. And here's how we're going to do it. Here's our plan of attack. Because now we're investing in a company that we know can have improvements, as opposed to, no, our conversion rate is perfect and our ad spend is already perfect and our growth is already perfect, and it's still not something we want. Then that's problematic, because now I don't know how I can help you of, hey, let's put you in contact with a salesperson that we know who's run an organization and built out that sales team to help you go from your one salesperson to a team of 8. If you already have everything figured out and you're saying, well, we're executing perfectly, there's no flaws, and you're still not meeting criteria that we're looking for, whether it's growth, whether it's sales, whether it's whatever it could be, then that's a tough thing for us to want to invest in, because there's no room for improvement. Like we said at the beginning, there is no perfect company, and that's okay. We don't expect perfection. We want you to be honest with us. We want to see how we can help and provide that help as best we possibly can.
Man, I almost hesitate to bring this up, but if and when we send what is most commonly coined as a rejection note, but it's more of a, I know these words are, to founders' ears, these are such frustrating words, but like it's more of a not yet note. Gosh, like that is still, we view that as part of the relationship timeline. And a founder's attitude and behavior when receiving and after that note, after that kind of rejection email, I don't even want to use rejection, but after that email of saying, hey, we're not confident enough to invest at this present moment, gosh, that's still a time that I would encourage founders to spin it positively in their mind and say, okay, this is still an opportunity. Maybe you do find out that, okay, the Awesome Fund is not for me then. But the way that we see it is it's still a chapter in the relationship. If as a founder, you can take the bullet points that we send you in that not yet notice, and you can go and tackle them and kind of shove them back in our faces and say, well, hey, like your concerns, I've addressed them and I've addressed them adequately and more. My goodness, like that, we'd love to have that pushed in our faces. So founders, definitely consider your conduct when you get that you get that not great news from an investment or lack of, because it's going to still be considered as part of the relationship.
Yeah. The advice that I got from one of my sales friends is a no for now. That opportunity is never truly closed because everything changes. The situations change, time changes, needs change, interests change, the company will change. And the very first piece of advice that I got from one of our advisors at the fund was, it depends. Everything depends. It always depends. It's really annoying because it always depends, but it always depends. Everything depends. If you get this email and you have 3 bullet points and you're saying, all right, this is how they're viewing us. These are weaknesses from their perspective. Whether you agree with them or not, that's completely up to you. But if you're like, okay, now I can understand why they're going to say that. And then you go and address them. And then you come back 3 months later, or 6 months later, or for the next round, maybe you finish up closing that round and you come back the next round and you've left us on positive terms. You said, hey, I appreciate it. Let me know if there's any other investors you can introduce me to. We'll keep you updated on our progress over time. And you come back a year from now and say, hey, I know last time you weren't interested in investing because of these issues. We've addressed them, as Keith said. And here's why we think these aren't a problem anymore. We've solved our conversion rate issue, and we've expanded our sales team beyond just 1 salesperson. Now we have 4. We have a process in place to do that. We have our customer success team in place, and it's a scalable process as well. We've increased our margins because we've adopted whatever it may be. And maybe those were all of our issues before, and now they're no longer our issues. Now it's a lot easier for us to go back to our investment committee and say, hey, these were the issues before. They've addressed them. Here's how they've addressed them. Do we still feel negatively towards them, or does this satisfy our requirements? Now, obviously, ideally, you're raising again, your valuation will have increased. The things we want to be looking for are different, but that shows, hey, they execute, they follow through, and they're able to get stuff done that are hard things to do, and they're able to do them. Does this make us more enticed? And I would say definitely brings up that conversation again, as opposed to the founder that doesn't like our response and says, no, those aren't issues. And then you don't get another chance if you don't ever come back to us. As a founder, resilience is so key. You're going to hear no from customers. You're going to hear no from people you want to hire that you can't afford to pay. You're going to hear no from investors, obviously. And it's not that we don't like you, so we're not going to give you money. Like I said at the beginning, there's just financial metrics and literally mathematical metrics that we have to hit. And it might not make sense at one time, but in a future instance, it might make time. And even if it doesn't, we can have that relationship still and introduce you, hey, I can't invest in you, but I know this other investor who's an angel investor who's in the space, and he might be a great person to talk to, because he's not trying to return money to his investors. He is the investor. So there's just so many opportunities for that follow-up. But I've heard that the FU money is in the follow-up. That's from a sales perspective, but also from a founder's perspective, is that follow-up is key. And that follow-up can be over a year period. That can be on a monthly period. That resiliency to make sure that you don't get discouraged. And I know you'll get discouraged. It's absolutely discouraging to hear no hundreds of times. But the faster you can get over that and move on to the next thing and help grow your company in whatever area that you have to grow it in, I think the faster you get to that FU money.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the investments we've made in TidalWise and Think Health and what we've liked about them. We talked about how it's possible to be a good or great company that's not necessarily a good or wise venture investment for a fund, in particular ours. We talked about the value of starting relationships early. Again, we're the Awesome Fund. We're a $5 million fund investing in pre-seed and seed stage deals in and around or near Kentucky. And we'd love to hear from you. So if you've got a startup, we'd love to hear from you. Approach us at minimum so that we can start benchmarking you against yourself and be in relationship with you over a long enough period of time that we can really make a confident decision to invest in you as a founder and your company as well. If you apply for the fund and it's determined a not yet scenario, we've got other programs that are at the ready to support you, including the 5 Across Entrepreneur Pitch Competition and the Fellowship Program, and also the Kentucky Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. So with that, I'll sign off, and don't you fear, you'll hear Garrett's voice again next week. Goodbye.
Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Awesome Inc. Podcast. And another quick thank you to Lee Rosevear and a few members from our community who provide the music that you hear in this show. Lastly, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. Or even better, come on down to our space. Come be a part of our community and get plugged in, and let's start something awesome together. You guys rock. We'll see you next time.